This is the Modern Mastery Unleashed podcast.
What is really holding you back from living the life that you are meant to live? From making your dreams a reality, from living the dream, as they say. We're kicking off March, which is International Women's Day. We've got Women's History Month, and we've got National Reading Month as well. So we're going to fuse all of this together in this very special episode as we enter March. And we're going to bring in a few of our favorite authors. As you know, we love our books. And actually, we're going to start with, let's see, who should we start with, Paul?
Oh, my God. A bit of Mel Robbins, maybe?
Let's do it. Let's start with the epic Mel Robbins. She wrote the 5-second rule as well as
The high five habit.
the high five habit. So if you don't know Mel Robbins, you need to get on her page. She is one of our favorite people. One day we'll have her on this podcast. But she talks about the 5-second rule, and that is you've got 5 seconds to make a decision. And she literally counts it down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. As in, it's not about not doing something. You've got 5 seconds to just prepare yourself and just do it. And she talks about in her other book, the high five habit. I'll let you talk about that, Paul, because I know you're more familiar with that book, but it's around sort of the same concept. So if you're the type of person who has difficulty making decisions, who talks yourself out of doing the things that you know you need to do, like waking up, if you have trouble, waking up in a timely manner, or whatever it is that you're avoiding or that you're facing resistance from, you've got 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. No excuses.
And I think leaving off from there, which is a fantastic place to start, you haven't really made a decision until you've taken an action. I just put my teeth back in. Apologies. So what Mel Robbins is talking about in the 5-second rule was in quite a dire time in her life, actually. So her and her husband Chris had opened up one restaurant location that had gone incredibly well. So they opened up a second one, and it really didn't go well. So she was in financial dire straits and couldn't get out of bed. Her husband was out knocking on bank managers' doors to try and solve the problem up early, and she was just struggling. And so she was led in bed, and she saw a rocket launching from NASA, and I think that was in like the afternoon. She saw the countdown, and she said, "Tomorrow morning, I'm going to count down from 5, and I'm going to leap out of bed like that rocket." So she counted down from 5. She knew none of the scientific neuroscience behind that habit, and it worked. She was on her feet. She was like, "Wow, I just got up. I'm going to try it again." So she did, and it worked. So she started using it for all different things with laundry and all different things she didn't want to do that she knew she needed to do, whether she felt like it or not. And that's, I think, what we can all associate with. We have this vision, we have the goals, we have the aspiration that doesn't leave you. Once you know it, once you're awake, you can't ever go back to being asleep again. So once you're awake, that's it. There ain't no going back. You can't plug yourself back into the matrix, so to speak. We know where that road leads. And so you want to self-actualize. That's what self-mastery is all about. And so basically what happens is like whenever you're sat in a meeting and you have that great idea and you think, and you think, I'll say something, and then you hesitate. And that slight hesitation is the spotlight effect in the brain, they call it, where it's like, oh, danger, danger. This could mean life or death. So we to stop this from happening. Just do anything else but that, because it means danger. Because of that hesitation, that's what it causes. And so the 5-second rule, because you're counting down, it engages the brain in doing it. So that thought process is interrupted.
Yeah.
So it interrupts the process into action. And so I've used this many times myself, and it doesn't mean you have to take a huge action, but you build momentum with that thing. And so, that relates back, I can't help but reference probably about another 20 books in this conversation, but bear with me, they are life changers. But it's like the question in the book, The One Thing, another one of my favorites, and that's, what's the one thing I could do today, such by doing it will make everything else irrelevant or unnecessary. And so that could be, what's the smallest action I could take? And then I'm going to contact that person. I'm going to reach out for some advice, but don't do it later. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, send that message.
Yes.
And it's not that thing like, I've been there and I've done this a million times. So it's like, okay, just utilize that tool. And so, fear is very sneaky, and it will come with all sorts of reasons and excuses. And that's the loudest voice, but the quieter voice comes in after. And you have to ask yourself that question. Actually, what do I really want? I do want those things, so I will take that action. Because the initial is the response, the fear response, to keep you where you are, which isn't where you want to be. Ultimately, we know where that road leads. It's frustrating and painful to be there. But the 5-second rule is there to interrupt that thought pattern that normally keeps people stuck. That's the overview of it. And the neuroscience backs it up. And the same with the high 5 habit. And so, again, she fell on hard times. She got cancelled from lots of different shows. She had her own TV show, and basically it was then axed. And she had all these different speaking engagements, which were all cancelled. And so she was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Things are falling in again.
Yeah.
Which
we can all relate to, right? We can all relate to those moments, those troughs, those dips in life, right?
Just massively. The blizzard of life hits, and that's where you want to become anti-fragile, right? That's what it's all about, forging that resilience. But she was like, here I am, world-renowned personal development, motivating person, and I haven't got one word to say to myself. That's what she said. And then she just gave herself a high 5 in the mirror and said, you got this. And something changed in her body. In the mirror, she did this. And she just couldn't figure out what had gone on, why she automatically felt good. And again, this was just, obviously she was divinely chosen to spread this wisdom to the world. She knew nothing of the neuroscience behind it again, but because we're conditioned that the high 5, what that means is like, you got this.
Yeah.
And a study was done with children taking tests, and kids that had a high 5 and stuff like that. It's really quite interesting to read the book. Again, we don't want to ruin that. But ultimately, the high 5 just means you've got this. It doesn't mean you need a reason to have it. It's not just a celebration. It's just, you got this. And it's really good when you have your own back. And it is, I implore you to try both of these habits, because it's very difficult to feel bad about yourself or doubt yourself when you give yourself a high 5 in the mirror, because I've tried it. And you feel totally silly doing it for the first few times, which is quite funny. So it always sets you off. But they're just momentum builders that you know, if we can, I don't know if there's any children listening to this, but if you believed in Father Christmas for 10 years and you believed in the Easter Bunny for 10 years, the Tooth Fairy, Batman, Superman,
Woman.
you can believe in yourself for 5 minutes.
Totally. Yeah, it's so true. And I think, you know, when we were talking about the books that we wanted to highlight, and of course, if you've been listening to us for a while, you'll know that we drop books, reference books all the time. And we also, one of our favorite authors is Jen Sincero, and she wrote the series You're a Badass. And I remember this was actually one of the first books I read at the start of my entrepreneurial adventure. And she actually narrates all of her books, and she is hilarious. So definitely get the audiobook, because when you hear her narrate it, you're just thinking like, she's amazing. But she talks about, you know, I'm just going to try. I'm just going to see what happens when I do this. I'm just going to see if I can start a business. I'm just going to see if I can start a new workout routine. I'm just going to see if I can take my driver's test, like whatever that thing is that you're afraid of doing, or you feel doubtful of yourself, you don't have that self-belief. Just try it. You know, what's the worst that could happen, but also what's the best thing that could happen? And she also writes and narrates a few other series in this You're a Badass series, but one of them is also You're a Badass at Making Money. And they are just really simple, really quick, really fun reads and listens. And there is so much wisdom that is shared in these books. And when you just think about this, going back to simple, we always say this on our podcast, it's about going back to simple things. Like, I'm just going to try and see what happens. And when you just have that notion, you take the pressure off. You don't go to the outcome right away, which is what a lot of us love to do. We love to go to the outcome, but there's a lot of anxiety and pressure when you go to, oh, I need a yes, I need a client, I need a lead, whatever that is for you. I need to lose weight, I need to gain weight. Again, like, insert whatever your goal is. But if you just like baby steps, I'm just going to try and see what happens when I change my diet. I'm just going to try and see what happens when I drink an extra glass of water a day. And or it can be something really big, much bigger than that. But what we're trying to stress here is that it's always about the little things that give you the momentum, that give you the confidence, that intense trust in yourself, which is what we talked about the other day. Do you have anything you want to add, Paul, to the Jen Sincero books, or that whole concept of, I'm just going to try and see what happens?
Yeah, I mean, I love her books, and I gave it to my wife's best friend, and she's taken it and run with it, and transformed her life and business with it. And I knew it would fit her character very well. So if you like to be educated and entertained, they are the books for you. So if you like humour, I think it's really important. And also sometimes to view the business as play. That I think sometimes we separate work and play, but Alan Watts talked about the mindset of just view work as play, and I really love that. And I think she does that really well. And talking like from her experience, she was 40, living in a converted garage. She had nothing, and she said she was a freelance writer, and she didn't realize how free her lancing was. And she's just I love her to bits. I just absolutely love her. She's so funny. So And sometimes you have to be careful because you can laugh so hard you can forget the concept altogether. So you have to be a little bit mindful because she's so funny. But from her experience, like, because she continually had the story, we can probably relate to this, a lot of us. I don't know what I want to do.
I don't know who I want to be when I grow up.
No, I don't know who I want to be. I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what my thing is. And she said she was stuck in that quagmire for years, decades. It was so painful. And I think we could all relate to that big time. She said, but if I'd have just said to myself, the clues are all around me. And I love that. God, goosebumps everywhere saying that. The clues are all around me, and it's really interesting because human beings are amazing at doing what they really want to do. So if you look at where you spend your money, what would you buy a ticket to go and view, to research, to look at, to enjoy, that's fueling your curiosity? If you go back to when you were 5 years old, if you can remember, what's your inclination towards before the world told you how to be, where to be, what to do, what you should do? Go back there and explore that space, or ask people around you, aunties, uncles, parents, if you're lucky enough to still have them, and ask them what was your inclination towards. And you might spark something in you that it's been dormant for a long time. And Marie Forleo, of course, everything is figure outable. How can we leave Maria Forleo out of this? We can't really. Love Marie Forleo. And because she had this thing about dance, and that she used to love to dance when she was young, and she thought she kind of missed the boat. And she took her years to get round to it, and she signed up for a dance class. And I think within a very short space of time, she was in absolute tears because she loved it so much. And I think sometimes we can get good at something if we apply 20 hours of focus time, but it takes us 10 years to start the first hour. Yeah. So, and I think that's it. I love it how she lowers the barrier. Just let me see what would happen. Just let me see. And I think that's really important. So I think we certainly have a habit, and our minds are really good at putting a glass ceiling in place to make it such a big deal. So I've always said to myself, don't make it such a big deal. Don't make it such a big deal. It's not that big a deal. And I think fear is a mile wide and an inch deep. And actually, when you step into it, you think, well, I didn't die. I made that phone call and I didn't die. So it's okay. I can cope with this. Like, why have I been sweating bullets over this? It's ridiculous. Like how much fear we feel. And I heard the other day that we are born loving and we learn fear. And I love that notion because it's true. It's just so true. And everything is figure outable. And a performance coach that I know spoke about people who say, I'm going to launch this business. I'm just going to launch this business. But the idea of that is exhausting. Launching something. Oh my God. What about just starting? I'm going to start then.
Yeah.
It takes the pressure off. It's like, what's the smallest action I can take? So momentum builders. It's like BJ Fogg, Tiny Habits. So we're on another reference. But it is the small things that compound, and we overlook those little things. It's like sometimes we think, well, we just want to totally overhaul the diet and go from eating what I've been eating for the last 10 years that's led me to this place, to overnight I'm going to eat a massively clean diet on Monday. It's just too big a change. Most likely it's too big of a change. But you think, okay, well, could I alter one meal? One meal could I alter? Because typically we eat on average 14 different things. So you think, okay, well, how could I eat more protein in that meal, and a better quality of carbohydrate or something like that? Swap this for that and make that plate a bit more healthy, and just do that for 2 weeks. And then could you then include that into another meal? Instead of like a radical overhaul, because all you're looking for is to become conscious. I think Carl Jung said, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our lives, and you will call it fate.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
love that. It's just that you just don't want to go unconscious. And then all of a sudden, once you have that awareness, then you start thinking, hang on a minute, why am I putting this in my body? Hang on a minute. Whoa, that's not in line with my values and my goals. Why am I doing that? And you start just to become aware and observe in the program that you live in. And I think that's really powerful, which all of these authors do incredibly well. It's all about empowerment, isn't it? And just recognizing the power that lives within us that we've forgotten. And it's the story of the Golden Buddha in Thailand, isn't it? Like when at the monastery they understood. If you've heard this story, forgive me, but I'll tell it again. But this is just our lives. So in a monastery in Thailand, there was this towering figure of a Golden Buddha. And they knew that invaders from a neighboring country were going to come in, and the warriors were going to come in, and they'd take this Golden Buddha, this towering figure of solid gold. So the locals thought, well, what we'd do was we're just going to cover it in loads of mud and stones and rock, and we're just going to pile it on so that they miss it, hopefully. And they did. And then hundreds of years later, there was this young monk meditating at the foot of this mound, and he saw a little bit of gold shining through. And so then all of the other monks, they chipped away all of this gold, and there was this towering statue of the Golden Buddha. And that is our lives. We are born heroic. We are born courageous, loving, knowing what we want and going for it. And then over time, the conditioning, the layers, we get buried, and we forget that we are the hero in our own story. And for me, life is about removing those layers and coming back to who you really are. And that's what life's all about, right? It's uncovering those layers of conditioning to come back to your natural state, at your natural best. And all of these authors are so good at explaining that in a simple way, actionable way that you can use immediately.
Yeah, I love that story. And I think even if you've heard it before, it's nice to be reminded of it, because we all need those little reminders sometimes. And that's why it's so great to have these books at our fingertips, because you can read a book once, twice, 3 times over, and every time you read it, you take something new away, or you have a different understanding, or you have a different perspective because you weren't maybe ready to hear it before, or you are in a better place than you were before. So you can actually take what the book or what the author is saying to you if you're listening to it. And I think that's why we love the other books that we wanted to mention today, which is The War of Art and Turning Pro by Stephen Pressfield, which are 2 of Paul's absolute favorite books. I'm just going to add that. And it's all about, like, how committed are you to what you want? So you first have to know what you want. You have to know yourself. You have to have the courage and the belief, even if it's just to try to start something small. And then it's about actually committing and doing the action. So many of us know what we need to do, but we cannot for the life of us do it. And it's like the big question, how do you do that? I've tried so many times and I fail every time. I can't do it. And I mean, that's your language, right? So just notice that right there. So whether you think you can or you can't, you are right, as Henry Ford says, but it's about setting yourself up for success. It's about actually sitting down and staying committed to what you're going to do and doing the things that maybe you don't love to do, but you've got to sort of find the joy in it, like Mary Poppins, there's a spoonful of sugar and or no, the spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down, but there's also the scene where they're cleaning up the playroom, and she says, in every job that must be done, there is an element of fun. And when you find the fun, snap, the job's a game. And so it's kind of like just going back to that playfulness, but also the discipline of it. Like, what is it really that is stopping you? Why can't you not do the thing? What is the excuse? What is the obstacle? What is the thing that you're prioritizing more than the other? Because usually we prioritize the little things and we forget about the big things. Kind of goes back to the rock, pebble, sand technique that we talked about in our Vision to Victory Summit, which is coming up, in the fall. But it's just that concept of what is that? What is it that's stopping you? And I'm going to let Paul come in here because he has a way of articulating what these books, like why we're bringing in these books for this specific point. And then we're going to get into how we're going to help you moving forward. But go, Paul.
Thank you, Nat. It's true. I mean, isn't that the thing?
The thing.
It's not that we have no idea. If we ask ourselves, what do we need to do? Now, most people in my research say they don't know how to start, which isn't necessarily true. It's the immediate reaction. We know direction, but we're not resourceful. It's not about the resources. It's about the resourcefulness. And when you really want something, you find the resources. All of the information is out there at your fingertips for free. Whatever you want to do, someone's done it and they've written God knows how many blogs about it. Success leaves clues. So if that's the case, you think, okay, well, what is it? And it might be that you have a history that's built up of trying things and not seeing it through. I've tried a thing, not seeing it through. So then in the back of your mind, you think, I don't want to try another thing and fail, Alex. I'm just confirming that I just can't ever do what I say I'm going to do. And it's painful. I mean, this hurts. And so we are biologically wired to move away from pain. And so that's in your nervous system, and you have a neuro association with things, people, places. You have a neuro association with that thing. And so location has energy and time has memory. So if you go to a certain place where you've tried to do a lot of different things and you haven't seen it through, that place may hold something that's painful for you and you want to move away from it. So it might be useful just to change environment. Try it somewhere else where you've got no association. That might help anyway. Just talking from experience, that really is useful. But ultimately, it comes down to you need to do something that moves you emotionally, and so then the resources appear. But typically, it comes from deciding, and most of the time we don't decide. It's a would like. And that goals are not a would like, they are a commitment. And so I think that when you decide on something you really want, its own discipline appears. You'll find a natural discipline to the thing. So you think about anything that you really love to do, it finds its own natural discipline as well. So I think if you're continually trying to force yourself to do something you hate, you have to question, is that the right thing? So, and do I really want that? Because it might be that, you know, if you're trying to go from couch to 5K running, it might be that, not saying that it isn't, but it might be that running's not for you and actually playing tennis is. Or something, you know, it just like sometimes you develop, like if you've been trying to do this thing for 10 years, it might be a mindset thing. It could well be, because it all begins and ends in our minds typically. That's just the way it is. You know, life is literally mental. So, but yeah, so how do you bring yourself to do the thing? And so what Stephen Pressfield talks about is, in Turning Pro and in the War of Art, is shadow careers. That we have shadow careers that but there's elements of what we really ought to be doing. And I think as you get older, if you're young and you know what you're here to do and what you love, that's great. But as you get older, I think that call starts to really pull. And it starts to get really painful, because you become aware of your own mortality, and it gets even more painful. And you start to feel like, I'm not in alignment with this thing. And that's where the midlife crisis comes from. So when we're all covered in mud as the golden Buddha, something comes along and it cracks that mud. And that could be a health scare, a financial loss, a relationship breakdown, health, health to do with somebody else in your family. Somebody else's health scare can make you question your own mortality. And so that's it. So you begin to wake up, and this isn't, I don't feel like this is who I am anymore. I don't know who I am. And you start to find your way back. And so I think initially you've got to decide on what you want and what you really want, and tie it to other people. So if you're continually struggling, you've got to get some leverage on yourself. You've got to understand what the consequences are if you don't do the thing. Like, if I continue on the road with my current habits and mindset, where am I going to be in 5 years? And how is that going to have a negative effect? Or if you're doing really well, what's the effect on that positively to all the people around you? So, you know, so that's really important, to get leverage on yourself. How does doing the thing affect all the people around you? You know, can you go and buy your nieces horses because they love them, but they can't afford to do that? You know, when you start tying it to that, like, how proud is your nan going to be of you, or people in your family, friends, you start tying it to that. And then you've got to get yourself accountable. But it's about deciding. And Hormozy talks about the heaviest things in the world are not iron or gold, but they're decisions that need to be made that you're not making. And I think we don't like to decide, because it feels like, so I think decide means in Latin, decadere, to cut off. So you cut off all other avenues. And so people don't like doing that. They don't like to cut off all other possibilities, because they feel like there's, you know, less loss or never leads to suffering. So you think, oh, well, that's why dieting's an issue, because the first 3 letters are die for the start. And if you think it's loss, less, or never, it's going to cause you suffering. So the moment we do it, so I think, but you've got to decide. And I think the moment you decide, a weight comes off the shoulders. Or I've decided this is where I'm going, and I'm just going to pour it on. And okay, well, what if it's the wrong direction? Well, you'll find out quicker if you pour it on. But, you know, what's going to, as Jim Rohn would say, what's going to make you burn the midnight oil? What's going to make you crack the books? What's going to make you do the Google search? What's the thing that you can't stop talking about? What leads you to your bliss? What are those things? And then you'll find a natural discipline that appears, because you can't get it out of your mind. So what is that thing that you just can't ever stop thinking about talking about? The clues are all around you, right? But I love The War of Art because he talks about resistance. The issue is resistance. So we've decided on the thing. We've decided I'm going to start this side hustle. I'm going to get down to 12% body fat and have massive guns and all that, whatever you want to do. You want to lose 20 pounds and feel better, have more energy. Resistance shows up. So the moment you decide, your best friend's a baker and she pops round with a tray of brownies, you know, true story. That's true story. You just decided and you think, okay, the universe goes, but how much do you want it? This happens immediately. The moment you decide an event will occur, please write in and tell us, send us a message. The moment you decide, you're tested immediately to pull on your resourcefulness to actually show up and make this stuff happen. And this is where most people fail. And this is what I really like about this is like, if you say to yourself, my God, this is so hard, I just don't know if I can continue. The reframe of that is, this is so hard, most people are not going to be able to do it. But you can. And the moment you've got over that big wall, there's much less a chance of someone else getting over that big wall, because that is where most people stop.
Yeah.
And I really like that reframe. But he talks about resistance massively, and overcoming resistance is just the discipline of saying, I've time blocked that time, I'm caffeinated, I'm motivated, and I've got this hour to work on my thing. And nothing is going to stop me. And even if, I've put my phone on silent, got a playlist on, it's across the room, I've set a timer, it's not within arm's reach, so I'm going to have to get up to get it, put friction in the way of my distractions. And even if you can't sit there and do anything, just sit in that chair. You sit in that chair and don't do anything else. And it will come back to you. And we have to get over that initial fix of picking something up and being entertained that we're used to of instant gratification, which is killing your dopamine. So this is a good dopamine detox than chasing real dopamine. So it's the pursuit hormone. So you actually release and experience more dopamine in the pursuit of the goal than attaining the goal. So it's really important to find that. And turning pro is just, again, it's about commitment. I interweave these books, but there's the interconnected theme is you're going all in, you're committing, you're not half-assing it. So if you keep half-assing it, the result then is reflected on the amount of work you've put in, which then feeds its own self-prophecy, doesn't it? Self-fulfilling prophecy of, oh, well, this probably isn't going to work, so I'll take a little bit of action. See, I told you so. But it's like, okay, but if I'm fully committed and I turn pro, so I'm no longer going to half-ass it, and I'm actually going to commit. And so commitment, what's that going to look like? Well, I'm going to ask somebody to hold my feet to the fire on what I say I'm going to do. And so everybody wants accountability until they get it, because it's going to get uncomfortable very quickly. But that's how you grow. You'll step out of one comfort zone into another, and you're going to grow as a person so much, and you'll be so thankful you did it. Because I think yes, growth and change is painful, but it isn't as painful as staying the place that you are for the next year, next 6 months, next 3 months, and that place is built for a person you no longer are. This is why you're asking these questions. This is why you keep listening to the podcast, you keep buying the books. But when you keep doing that and you're not moving forward, I mean, it is better to read 2 books and implement everything within than to read 52 books in a year and do nothing. The idea isn't information accumulation, it's about application of what you learn. So it might mean it will take you a long time to read a book if you actually implement it, but your life will change immediately. You start implementing this stuff. But I can't remember, it might have been Hormozy again. He's talking about reading personal development books, and that he was reading all of these books. And he said, my life is the same. That book's contradicting that one. and my life is the same. So I'm making a commitment that I'm not going to read another book unless I implement what's within it.
Mm.
And I think that's a really good rule to have, that you're looking for that nugget that you want to tell somebody about immediately, that you read and you're like, oh my God. And you're so right now, what you said before, like you can read a book 2 or 3 times and you'll think, oh my God, that wasn't in there before. But
Totally.
what I've learned is wisdom really does meet you where you're at.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you weren't ready. Your consciousness wasn't quite as raised as it is now. And so you see things you didn't see before. It's amazing that. It's the first time I read Think and Grow Rich, and he talks about the secret within it. The first time I didn't get it, couldn't find it, couldn't read it. And it's repeated during the book numerous times, couldn't see it. I read it a second time, saw it straight away. And I was like, really? I obviously wasn't ready. And it says, when you're ready, you'll see it. And that's amazing. The only book I've ever read like that, which is really intriguing. And it's a very weird book because Napoleon Hill is very weird.
Yeah.
If you've ever read Outwitting the Devil, he's a very weird man. But that's a very intriguing book. But it's about, all of it's having about a definiteness of purpose, and you've all got your own success code. And if you look back in your life to things you've achieved, you're not starting from scratch. You've all had practice in doing this stuff. You're not starting from scratch. If you look at how you've won before in your life, because you have, what was the success recipe for you? For me, it's full commitment. Simple as. Anything I've fully committed to, I've succeeded at to the highest level in my life. And when I dabble and half-ass it, I do it really badly. And so that's probably a common theme for most people. But actually, when you fully commit, it's amazing what you can achieve in a very short space of time, actually. Just like behavior change, just the small things become the big things. It's amazing, isn't it? And this is a slightly different reference, but I thought of you, Nat, because of retreats and travel. And I read something in a book that just blew me away. And it might have been by Rumi, which was, what an amazing guy that guy was, unbelievable wisdom. And he said, if you travel far enough, you meet yourself.
Yeah.
And I love that phrase. And I think sometimes that's why you have to get out of the environment you're normally used to. Just go somewhere else and you become more of who you are, because you can adapt a role in places
Yeah.
you're used to being in, and you can't quite be at ease in yourself, So, and that's the thing. Like, you want to make this the disciplined pursuit of less. This isn't about doing more; it's doing less but better. This is 10x is easier than 2x. You're removing all of the busy work to the 20% that gets 80% of the results. It's like extreme Pareto principle. It's like, what's the one thing instead of the 20%? What's the one thing? But what's the one thing? What's the lead domino they talk about in that book? What's the lead domino that's going to knock everything down? So, okay, I'm going to reference one other book because I can't leave it out, because it's by a female author, and it is absolutely awesome. I've never read any work like it on human behavior, but it's called The Mountain Is You by Brianna West. And it is amazing. And this is all about self-sabotage and what it means. And she talks about when we self-sabotage, it's just really an unconscious fear of the unknown. And whatever you sabotage with food, alcohol, doom scrolling, whatever it is, stalling, in whichever way you do it, it comes down to a fear of some sort. But actually, there's she talks about the subconscious is trying to tell you something, which is just amazing. And actually, you have an unmet need. which is just beautiful, but that you have an unmet need underneath it. That book's incredible. The Mountain Is You, Brianna West, and she's a good person to follow as well. Incredible writer, but but when she went to write that book, she was like, "This book is going to be one of the best books in the world. This book is just going to, I just know it is," and it is. And yeah, it's called The Mountain Is You. It's all about transforming self-sabotage into self-mastery.
Okay, so we've got quite a few books to list with this episode to keep you busy for National Reading Month. Quite a few phenomenal authors that are all about just being human, right? I mean, you think about International Women's Day, it's about equality, it's about inclusion. It's not about a gender, it's not about race, it's not about a diagnosis, it's not about a disease. You know, we're so quick to want to label ourselves as a certain type or a certain disease or a certain diagnosis. And I just think it's about coming back to just being human and really just mastering yourself and being who you are as you evolve into the person you are becoming, and you shed old selves and you step into new selves, new brilliance of it's this beautiful journey of becoming yourself. And one of the things that Paul touched on was, the midlife crisis. And I always like to say, it's not a midlife crisis, it's a growth spurt. And it really resonates with me because, I fell into that. People were trying to label me, oh, you're having a midlife crisis, you're leaving a really high paying, successful corporate job, and you're going off retreat hopping around the world, like you're committing career suicide. What are you doing? Like, you're having a midlife crisis. And actually, it was the biggest growth spurt of my life.
Yeah.
Like, it was massive. And it's like going against the norm. It's going against what is expected, what is, what, like the norm. I'm just going to say it like that. But it's really interesting. And when you were saying, your journey leaves clues, one of the things and one of the tools that we provide you in the premium members area is this tool called the Life Map. And it kind of goes with this book, Knowing Yourself. And it's really, really interesting. But what we wanted to highlight in this episode is accountability. So we've talked about a lot of things that may be coming or standing in your way, whether it's knowing what you want, whether it's not being committed or succumbing to excuses that are in front of you, distractions that are in front of you, self-sabotage, however you want to call it. But one of the most valuable things in our community is the accountability piece, where every weekend, every Friday, you get prompted to complete and submit an accountability form. And this is to hold yourself accountable to the things that you said you were going to do, to the things you said you want, so that you can truly start living the dream. You can start making your vision a reality, and you can start taking away the things that no longer serve you. You can start tweaking and receiving the feedback and looking at the results you're getting and not taking it personally, but actually realizing, well, what is the change in the approach that I have to take? Or what can I learn from these results to inform my next action without losing the self-belief, without losing not being able to tap into your highest potential, like being able to access that highest potential, the highest potential in you, and take the action that's going to lead you to the results. And we talked about this, or I can't, that episode hasn't been released yet, but it's about the success loop. But if you're resonating with this and you want accountability, for 5 pounds a month, we will hold you accountable and we will give you the tools, the resources, whatever you need. We are there. We want to help you succeed. We want to help you make it happen. We want to help you lose all the stuff that is going on, inside your head, the monkey mind, or let's address the things that are holding you from living the life that you want, achieving the goals that you want, whatever those are. It could be anything as big as moving country and buying a villa to helping, with charities or philanthropic endeavors, or just providing good education to your kids, or yourself. It's whatever you want. And that is sometimes the hardest thing for people to hone in on. But we're inviting you to join us in our premium members area, and we want to hold you accountable to your goals, to your dreams, to your vision. Paul, did you want to say anything before we wrap up this amazing episode?
No, it's been brilliant. I think that if you just start with your value, so if whatever you value, so what are the top 5 values that you live by? And if you're living in alignment with your values, you'll have a blissful, happy, fulfilling life. So if one of your values is nature, and you love nature, and you're never in nature, it's going to impact you massively. So I think when you align your values, your goals to your values, and then understand what is non-negotiable that you're going to do on a daily basis to achieve that. So think about what the actions are and ask for accountability to those actions. Now you can leave the outcome. You know what the outcome is, you know what the North Star is, but all you need to focus on is execution of those non-negotiables, whatever that needs to be. Does that mean you need to be in bed an hour earlier? Does that mean I need to get up at this time of the day to actually work on my thing for an hour, that I've got time to myself, uninterrupted? So it's like, what are those actions going to be that are going to move you there? And that's what we want you to ask accountability for. What are you going to do on a daily basis that's going to make a difference? And so nothing's going to change in your life unless you change what you do daily. It's as simple as that. So it might be 2 things that you address that, look, guys, I want you to hold me accountable. I want to get myself in better shape. I'm not happy with where I am. And I want you to hold me accountable for doing 3 workouts a week and 10K steps a day. So you think, okay, well, you've got 70K steps in a week and 3 workouts. How did you do? How did you plan for that? What went wrong? How can you do it better? These are really simple things that we overcomplicate to make sure that we can't execute, when realistically it's brutally simple. So just think about the actions that lead you to where you want to be. They might not be perfect, but an imperfect plan executed is better than the most perfect plan that you never do anything with. And planning is its own form of procrastination. I've been there many times.
Practice makes progress, is what we like to say.
Oh, yes, 100%.
Okay, everyone, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. We'll see you in the members area as well. Bye.
Bye.